So many scientists are finally coming together to project that by 2025, half of the world's population will have some sort of water-based vulnerability, and that by 2030, some developing regions of the world's demand for water could exceed supply by 50%. We are facing catastrophic events in our future when it comes to water. Let's talk about what we can do. So we all know that water, H2O, agua, if you will, it plays a huge role in every living organism on Earth's daily life. There is not a living species of anything that exists on this planet that does not at least need water to help survive. It's also a solvent used by many worldwide for chemical-based substances, and it's used in facilities for cooling and transportation purposes. I mean, we need it for everything. It is in our daily lives, and we're not alone. So yes, in America, we have started to talk about water shortages, the impacts it's having on places like Michigan, and how we can do better going forward. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. How is contaminated or poorly maintained water facilities affecting us now and in the short-term future? I think it's a huge topic, and for some reason nobody's talking about it, and I'm almost wondering if it's because it's going to play a huge role in what the next major global war is over. Because can you come up with anything more valuable and also more scarce at this day and age than water? So first, I just wanted to cover exactly how much water exists on Earth, because it is insane. 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. If you think about it, that only leaves 29% covered in land. That's the land we're on. That's the land we see in maps. Sure looks like more than 29%. It isn't. The crazy thing about this, however, isn't exactly how much water exists on the Earth's surface. It's just how much is being used by us. Because 96.5% to 97% of all of the water here on Earth is actually in the oceans or the seas, making it saltwater, also making it so humans have not figured out a way to use it in mass, efficiently, and cost effectively. So that means we as human society are depending on 3% of the Earth's water supply. However, it actually goes down from there as well. We also have 1.7% in groundwater, and then another 1.7% in glaciers, so ice formations up north like in Antarctica or Greenland. Those are holding a lot of water inside of them. And while a lot of media outlets talk about how they're melting and that's releasing fresh water into our groundwater, and you can insinuate that is a good thing, however, we're contaminating it and polluting it at such high rates, we can't filter it out and keep it clean fast enough for it to be utilized by a human population in mass quantities at a cost-effective rate. And it does leave a 0.001% of water which is in the atmosphere at all times. Basically, precipitation and rainfall. It's that cycle that keeps going. So, with only 2.5% of all water being fresh water, how much do we actually come into contact and get to use daily? Well, it's terribly, terribly small. You're going to be surprised, because us as human beings have always lived and survived on 0.3% of the fresh water that exists here on Earth. That's right, all of humanity, from the birth of time to now, unless some crazy technology was hidden, which I wouldn't put it past, but we've always depended on 0.3% of fresh water. Now, with where technology has taken us today, with the amount of greed in politics, the amount of oil drilling and fracking and contamination of oceans, and our constant need of electronic waste, we're adding to this substantially and really depleting the water that is safe for us to drink. And we're seeing effects of this here in America, a first world country. This shouldn't be happening here. The fact is, we should be able to help other nations. We should be helping invest in desalination plants. There is so much that we can be doing. We live in a time, 2016, today, the technology exists that we could irrigate deserts. We could make deserts farmland. We could do great things, and yet we don't invest because we don't take the time to talk about this. That's why I feel like this video is so important. When we see places like Flint, Michigan, drowning in awful contaminated water, and then we see that government officials are putting out this propaganda saying the problem with the Flint, Michigan water is the lead, when actually it's the chlorine. And if you look into what chlorine does to water, it creates a byproduct called chloramine, and with that, it leads to huge amounts of cancer. So much so that some areas around this very country have had cancer institutions built in the same counties that water plants are put in. These are all related. What's in your water is super dangerous, and you need to start paying attention. What's being talked about right now? Don't you think it's a little weird that people in a first world country are having to stock up on bottled water because they can't get fresh water? Does that sit with you correctly? I mean, you can go to your tap and turn it on, water comes out. Did you know that there are over 3.5 billion people living on Earth who don't have access to that, or at least access to that with clean, safe drinking water? 1 billion people exist on this Earth that have no access to fresh water. Another 2.5 billion exist where they do have access to water, however, it's deemed unsafe to drink. This is a huge problem. That's almost half of the world's population suffering from being water vulnerable. That isn't fair. It's not fair to be dependent on something and not have it because you're born in a specific region of this globe. That's not cool. We need to help people. We need to help get water, the life-sustaining chemical compound that we all use daily. We should be getting that everywhere. It shouldn't be hard. We're not investing in any infrastructure, and that's really going to be the detriment of not only this country, but also us as a globe. Think about trade. What happens when there's a war on water? How is that going to affect trade deals? How many countries are even going to want to deal with each other when you can't rely on that country having safe, usable drinking water? I recently just watched this fascinating documentary that I implore everybody to watch. You really need to. You learn so much. It makes you like, whoa. It's called Cowspiracy, and I cannot remember the director, producer guys. I think it's two guys. But they were on the Joe Rogan Experience. So if you want to find out who they were, just go to Joe Rogan and type in Cowspiracy. You'll find it right away. They were talking about how nobody in all of these conservation groups, like Greenpeace, Save the Forest, Don't Contaminate Water, all these groups, all of them are talking about all the things we do that contaminate. And it was discussing all that, you know, the contamination of groundwater and deforestation and contaminating oceans and fracking and oil drilling and dependent on fossil fuels and all that craziness. It did talk about that. And that is all something we should pay attention to. However, do you ever wonder why the government is so okay with us talking openly about that? But the really cool thing about this documentary is that it went a step further to push the buttons of these conservation groups and ask them, why is nobody talking about agriculture? Because one of the most fascinating things you're going to learn is right here. 70% of fresh water that is used by humans is used for agriculture. Do you understand that if we stopped agriculture alone and went to a vegetarian or vegan-based diet, which I know sounds so extreme to most, but if we did that, we'd be saving 70% of the fresh water we go through? That's insane. Do you realize that just an extra 20% would really ease the tension on our country? And then having an additional 50 on top of that, my God, what could we do? It would be so cool. Another really interesting part of water that you should take a look into briefly is prison water and the quality of water that prison inmates are given. It's deplorable, really. I was watching this documentary about prisoners talking about the state of their minds and bodies after being in prison for so long. They're deteriorating. We don't give zero shits about what prison inmates' lives are like, and we really need to start, because all of the contamination of uranium and fluoride in the prison waters is leaking into our groundwater. These facilities are so poorly maintained that the cracks and runoff that lead to contamination of fresh groundwater in local surrounding areas is constantly being reported. These facilities are not taken care of. America spends $0 on infrastructure a year. Not really, but it might as well be. and we expect the problem to go away. There are dozens of states that have prisons that have been notified that because of the bad upkeep of their facility, they are contributing to contaminating local communities' groundwater as well. And yet every time a solution is proposed, it seems like it's stuck in legal limbo and nothing genuine happens. There are some cases where prisons were forced to ship in water from other prisons. It's like, wait, this is how we're thinking? They literally have examples where they take water from one prison halfway across the state to deliver it to another. They're constantly giving press releases that the water is fine or needs improvement, but nobody's talking about the real severity. There are plenty of prison inmates who have filed lawsuits that go nowhere. There are plenty of interviews with inmates talking about kidney deterioration, memory loss or brain damage, and also cancer. I mean, all of these are such a big deal. We as a people know that Nazi Germany used fluoride as a way of mind control to help subdue the people of the country, and yet we let our government put fluoride in our water willingly because we think it's good for us. No, the good fluoride you need for your teeth is in an apple, okay? It's not supposed to be in your water. If you are adding any chemicals to your water, you're a nutso-banan. We need to start taking this more seriously. And we also need to realize that the EPA is a joke of an organization. They have so many cases brought up against them about fraudulently changing statistics of groundwater, making sure it appears safe to the public to drink. That has to be making the people of Flint, Michigan scared. And honestly, the stuff I was reading about Flint, Michigan, everybody's so worried about the lead in the water, but it might be the government's ploy to get you to look into that because that is actually an issue they can get to go away. Lead is actually dropping in contaminants in the Michigan water. However, if you look into chlorine, it's increasing, and that's where the scary part comes into play, because that's where cancer comes from. We all need to take this a lot more seriously than we do. You know, we have California drying up. We have cities like New York and Miami on the verge of being underwater. What exactly are we going to do about this problem? We're running out of fresh water to drink. We're almost going to be engulfed by salt water. What are we going to do? I mean, at some point, even the crazies who talk about this, the people who look like they're so whacked out of their mind that they can't even know what's factual, you find out that those are the people onto something. You can't constantly jump down somebody's throat for giving you new information just because it challenges your ideals and makes you uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. You're supposed to be uncomfortable, because if you knew what was really going on, you wouldn't be comfortable. That's the point. Learn more, look into what's going on around you and in your society. This water issue is a big deal. It's going to happen for the rest of your life, and we can do something now. We have the means and the technology to make things better. We need more young people speaking out about it. So do that. Do that part. Research and talk. And for now, I just want to say thank you for listening. Contribute to the conversation in comments below. I urge you. And have these discussions with people you live with or hang out with or people you see every day. Because honestly, every conversation helps moving us towards somewhere a little bit more enlightened. Take care of yourself the rest of the day. I will see you tomorrow. Drink safely.